Once bitten, twice shy. What does that mean? It means when you have been hurt or betrayed or let down by someone or something once, you become too scared to try that thing or that person again. Ka Sepedi ba re, botlhale bo tswa lebading, which literally means wisdom comes from a wound. Such idioms and figures of speech serve to guide us and warn us of dangerous situations and people. I hope that we as South Africans, especially Black South Africans, will apply the words of wisdom as we head to the voting polls. I'm Katlego, welcoming you to Citizen Concerned, where we remind you to beware of the comrades. When we say don't trust Jacob Zuma or Julius Malema or Cyril Ramaphosa, there are those among us who then ask us, why is Zuma or Malema or Ramaphosa not in jail if he has committed all these crimes? If he committed all these crimes, why don't you go and lay a charge against him? Another one asked politely, how much did Zuma and the Guptas steal if they have really committed all those crimes? And is it as bad as what Ramaphosa's administration stole through COVID? We have discussed some of these issues, but I guess we need to repeat it for those who missed it. The reason why the ANC itself does not deserve to be voted for again is because they are the ones who were supposed to monitor what was happening in the executive. The President of South Africa is held accountable by the Parliament since he is appointed by the Parliament. The ANC had a majority during Zuma's time and they protected him at every turn. Just like how they protect the couch president Cyril Ramaphosa now with his couch money. There were allegations of kidnapping and torture of the people who stole that money, as well as money laundering and tax evasion. And yet the people who were supposed to make sure they addressed this issue did nothing to hold the couch president accountable. The ANC defended Zuma when news came out that too much money was spent on his house using our taxes. While people are living in shacks, Zuma had a beautiful big property already, but more than 200 million rand of our taxes was spent on that same property. How is that even fair? You're a president, but you see your house being renovated to this extent and you're trying to make it seem like it has nothing to do with you. Guys, if Zuma is innocent in the case of Nkandla, why don't you do what he did in your own workplaces? Let your house get renovated for 1 million rand or even 100,000 rand using your employer's money, and let's see if you get away with it. So now let's talk about the Guptas. The president is appointed by Parliament, and he, Jacob Zuma, as a president with the advice of his deputy president Cyril Ramaphosa, then decide on who should become the minister. Everyone knows that the person who appointed you into a position is the person you answer to, right? In a company, the CEO can appoint a general manager and other employees. In some cases, the CEO appoints a general manager and then the general manager can appoint everyone else. It depends from company to company. But in general, the person that appointed you is a person you answer to. Sometimes after being appointed by the CEO or the general manager, the department manager then appoints everyone else in that department. If you're an accountant, you may report to the finance manager. If you're an electrician, you may report to the maintenance manager. And the manager reports to the CEO, who is in charge of all of us. Now imagine if someone who doesn't work in your company, someone strange and foreign who has never worked in your company, calls you on the phone and tells you to come to their house on a weekend. When you get there, that stranger or foreigner whom you've never met asks you if you would like to be the maintenance manager. You were just an electrician and all of a sudden he says, hey, we're thinking of appointing you to become the maintenance manager. After you accept the offer from the stranger, you go back to work on Monday and the CEO then appoints you to become a maintenance manager. Now, after being appointed by the CEO, imagine that stranger, that foreigner, telling you to transfer money that is meant for the maintenance of the company machinery into his bank accounts. He tells you to transfer the money meant for the bonuses of employees into his bank accounts. You then discover that other managers in the company were appointed like this, and they all do what this stranger tells them to do. And whenever they refuse to do what the stranger tells them to do, the CEO demotes them and puts someone else in their position. Where has that ever happened? I've never heard of a company where that happens. Nowhere. Except it did happen in South Africa. It happened with the South African government under then President Jacob Zuma. Zuma was the CEO and the Guptas were the stranger, that foreigner. So let me ask you, who was in charge of South Africa? Was it the CEO? No, it was the strangers, the foreigners, the Guptas who were Zuma's friends. Basically, whenever people did what they did not like, those people would be removed from their position.
You were led down a corridor where you were shown the bathrooms.
Yes.
And is it your testimony that Mr. Ajay Gupta came into the room where you were sitting from that corridor?
From that corridor.
Okay.
When he came, he then spoke about me coming from the Northern Cape, about uranium, and that I could be useful or helpful in assisting them with the uranium that they were to procure for the nuclear build. And he expatiates on my agenda of the PBMR with the president. That gives me a clear impression that he knows what my agenda with the president is. He talks about that project and that I must forget about it. And then he talks about SAA's turnaround strategy, that it was not working and it was not yielding results. And he says to me, SAA burns money. He had also said that PBMR burns money. And then he suggests that if I facilitated the abolition of the Johannesburg, SAA route and back, that SAA stops traveling that route.
Let's understand that route again. It's SAA route?
It's Johannesburg, Mumbai, Johannesburg. Facilitate, if I agree to facilitate its abolishment, that SAA does not travel that route anymore, I could become a minister. If I agree that I would eventually facilitate that, I could become the Minister of Public Enterprises, not in a week's time, in the near future. That startled me. And I said to him, how so? I must say also, much as I initially was getting astounded, shocked, I also wanted to hear where this was heading to. He said I could be minister. I said, how so? He said the president was going to reshuffle his cabinet in the recent future, and Minister Barbara Hogan was going to be reshuffled, and I could become the minister in her place when she's reshuffled if I agree that once I become the minister, I would abolish the South Africa, India, South Africa route.
During Zuma's presidency, how many times did he shuffle ministers around? Do you know? This is the meaning of state capture. Because the state had been captured, the president did whatever the Guptas wanted. And many Zuma and MK party supporters used the excuse that the Guptas were around during Mandela's time, during Mbeki's time, and that is true, they were. But Mandela and Mbeki did not allow the Guptas to loot under their watch, to appoint ministers on their behalf, and that's the difference. Multiple members of parliament and ministers have stated that they were offered government positions by or on behalf of the Gupta family in return for beneficial commercial decisions once appointed, all under Zuma's leadership.
Finance Minister Nhlanhla apologizing to South Africa, saying that in his statement that he offers further apologies for not disclosing details with regards to his meeting with the Gupta family. The minister says he deeply regrets lapses and begs for forgiveness. This is according to his meeting with the Guptas in his office.
When you are a cabinet minister, you owe your plate and everything to a president. So you can't stand up in a meeting against the president because you can be reshuffled at night.
Malola says the NEC did not discuss the issue of the Gupta family's influence on Jacob Zuma and the party leadership. He, however, denied being inconsistent when he did not tell former public protector Thuli Madonsela about the call he got from AJ Gupta.
Now here I come and somebody calls me and say that congratulations and so on for Minister of Sports. So I took that matter and to the National Executive Committee to share part of my experience, to say to the NEC that this thing of the Guptas and them interfering and so on, calling ministers and so on, it is a big problem. One day this thing will land us in a big crisis. And I said that to me, these people enjoy the powers that even not ordinary members of the ANC enjoy.
For those of you who ask, how much did Zuma and the Gupta steal? Well, to be honest, the real monetary value of the crimes cannot be put into numbers. Let me show you what I mean. Firstly, let's talk about the Gupta Gate. The Guptas brought more than 200 guests from India to attend a wedding of one of their relatives. They landed the plane at the Waterkloof Air Force Base. That is not a port of entry for civilians. They were supposed to enter via OR Tambo, but instead of following the rules, Bruce Kolwane, then Chief of State Protocol at the Department of International Relations, simply used President Zuma's name and the plane was allowed to land. That's our military. To give you an idea of what I mean, an Air Force base is meant to be secretive and protected from civilians and unauthorized and unverified access. Only officials of other governments coming into South Africa on official business might be allowed to do this. And yet these ones were coming for a wedding. Now we get into the money stuff. After landing at Waterkloof Air Force Base, we later discovered that the Gupta wedding was actually paid for by, drumroll please, you, the taxpayer. 250 million rand for the Vrede Dairy project was set aside by the Free State province for poor black farmers to benefit from that money. They never received the money. Msebenzi Zwane transferred more than 220 million rand to the Gupta company called Estina. 30 million rand of that was sent to India and then back to South Africa, where it then paid for the Gupta wedding. Those millions were supposed to uplift some poor black farmers in the Free State Vrede Dairy project, but those poor people continue to suffer. So tell me, Zuma supporters, what's the monetary value of poverty due to corruption? Those farmers are suffering, so please give me a monetary value to allocate to that suffering. Vuyisile Mlambo and Moses Chake, the whistleblowers in this case, were kidnapped and tortured. From what I could find, Moses died due to this torture. Tell me, Zuma supporters, what is the monetary value of the death of Moses Chake, the auditor who questioned these payments? What is the monetary value of his life? What's the monetary value of the absence of a husband or a father? In total, more than 1 billion was lost in the Gupta corruption. Why? Because the people were answering to the Guptas. So that's a second amount we can mention. And even if you get the money back, theft is theft. Even if I get the money back, the thief goes to prison. This was money laundering. I don't want to get into the details or into a lot of the details that occurred because of time and because it's really not worth it.
Therefore, let me state the facts on the matter of whether I was approached by non-governmental individuals in respect of the position of Minister of Finance. Members of the Gupta family offered me the position of Minister of Finance to replace the then Minister Nene.
The Gupta family denied offering Jonas the job of finance minister. Firing Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene cost the South African economy 500 billion rands. I'll read a small section of it, but the news articles are all over the internet. But maybe people who keep disputing the facts about Zuma don't like to read, just like Zuma the criminal. The Sunday Times has reported that the Minister of Mineral Resources, Msebenzi Zwane, and the then Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, David van Rooyen, who was controversially appointed by President Zuma as Minister of Finance in December 2015, met with members of the Gupta family in Dubai. Van Rooyen allegedly met with them only a few times after his unsuccessful appointment to be Minister of Finance on the 20th of December 2015. Minister Zwane assisted in the sale of a large coal mine to a Gupta-owned company. Former bodyguards of the Gupta family have stated that they often saw important government officials such as Claudio Motsoneng, the COO of the state broadcaster, the SABC, and large amounts of money in cash moving out of the Gupta's Saxon World estate. The bodyguards also stated that AJ Gupta would visit President Zuma up to 3 times a week until 2015 at the presidential guest house in Pretoria. A spokesperson for President Zuma denies that the visits ever happened. When the news about these crimes came out, the Guptas and the Zumas worked with a British company called Bell Pottinger to discredit the allegations. Bell Pottinger was a public management company. Basically, their job is to shadow the minds of people. They were a company that specialized in spreading disinformation in order to protect someone's image. That is how they made money. They were contracted by the Guptas to clean up their image and to create an idea that white people were the ones who were attacking Zuma and the Guptas. This is where Andile Mngxitama, another Umkhonto member, came into the picture. He was funded to support Zuma and the Guptas while preaching the famous white monopoly capital lies. White monopoly capital this, white monopoly capital that. He was funded to start his own campaign with the Black First, Land First political party. Before Zuma, racial tensions were not as bad as they are today. What the Guptas and Zuma did with that Bell Pottinger campaign alone caused racial hate to rise so much that we are living in a time where young black people who never experienced apartheid hate white people more than the old people that did experience apartheid. What monetary value can you put on causing division? What figure would you allocate to the years of racism that was sparked by this campaign? Law enforcement agencies chose to take no action. This allowed the Guptas to escape the country. Nothing happened to Zuma for what he did. Pravin Gordhan stated that the state capture cost South Africa $250 billion. The Daily Maverick estimated that the state capture cost South Africa $1.5 trillion. While the nation of South Africa and her people were being stolen from, the Zuma family kept benefiting. The Guptas employed some of Zuma's family members, including one of Zuma's wives, as well as Duduzane Zuma, who was made a director in several of Gupta family businesses. In 2008, this woman you're praising now, known as Duduzile Zuma, was also made a director at Sahara Computers, a Gupta company.
From a coal mine to a dairy farm to a television station, Eskom, Transnet, Danel, SAA, SARS. The Gupta family managed to worm their way in, allegedly corrupting the country's institutions, politicians, and even a president.
While Zuma and his family enjoy the proceeds from the Gupta looting, there are people who have been assassinated for speaking up. There are people who are fired for speaking up. There are people who have died in hospitals because of load shedding that was influenced by the Zuma-Gupta affairs. There are people who have gone into depression. Others are impoverished. Many people would have sued the government if they knew that they are suffering because of Zuma, if they knew how and if they had the means. If people really understood the damage that Zuma did to this country, they would have demanded public justice. They would have stoned him with bricks even. But no, they choose to stone to death a drug addict that steals a TV because he has no food. There is no monetary value for what Zuma did to South Africa. Once bitten, twice shy. Botlhale, botjwale bading. Have you ever heard of Proverbs? Look that book up and learn to use ancient wisdom. For example, whoever is a partner with a thief hates his own life. He swears to tell the truth, but reveals nothing. In other words, those among us who choose to vote for these corrupt men and support these men hate themselves. You say you want to tell the truth, but choose to tell lies. Who pays the price for your foolishness? They will likely do to all of us what they did before, or even worse. Once bitten, twice shy. I'm Katlego. This is Citizen Concerned, and until next time, beware of the comrades.